Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Access Blockbusters Pod. Welcome back to episode number 95 of the Access Blockbusters Pod. Thank you so much for joining us, as always. There are a lot of fun things to talk about. A surprise announcement, title reveal for the Super Mario Bros. Movie 2. We'll get into that. Peacemaker Season 2 is halfway over already, which is crazy. And a lot of other fun things, guys, to talk about. Wake Up Dead Man as well. So yeah, I'm excited to jump right back in. Guys, thank you so much for the support on this channel over the last few months. It's been amazing. We are on the road to 2,000 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, make sure to do so. Give this video a like if you could. And if you're interested in listening to the audio-only platforms, Spotify, Overcast, and Apple Podcasts available for you as well. The audio-only version of the podcast is where the entirety of the podcast comes out in full first on Saturday mornings. But a little bit of an announcement. If you guys are interested, I have introduced a membership tier called the Access Blockbusters Crew. If you're interested in getting all of the videos, so every single video, every single clip for the week, and the entire video podcast out on the same day on Saturday, ahead of everyone else, because usually the clips are staggered throughout the rest of the week, then you can feel free to sign up to become a member. No obligation, of course, but it's just something that I thought I would include as well there. That's about it for the intro, guys. I appreciate you guys so much for joining us. As always, let's dive into this week's topics. Alrighty, guys, we are still a good bit away from what is likely the most important MCU movie. I'm not going to say ever, but it is certainly one of the most important MCU movies in recent history, that being Avengers Doomsday. It's important because while it has similar expectations to a film like Avengers Infinity War or Endgame of trying to tie things together, one could argue that there's even more pressure on a film like Doomsday because of the sort of, shall we say, variance in quality and reception from the audience and box office and things like that from the multiverse saga thus far. And they're trying to shut it down in as good of a way as they can. So they're trying to make it work with the X-Men, with the Fox X-Men, with the Avengers, the new Avengers, Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four. So we'll see how that goes. They're bringing back, of course, the Russo brothers and Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom. But the question I wanted to talk about today, and it's so early, right? We still have a year plus, a year and 3 months until Avengers Doomsday hits theaters. So lots and lots of time. And we might even make another segment. It's basically the same title, the same question, in about a year. We'll see. The question, though, is can Avengers Doomsday, will Avengers Doomsday make $1 billion? Now, at first glance, it's a silly question. Of course Avengers Doomsday is going to make $1 billion. It's an Avengers film. That's sort of what we all would have thought had we asked this question 3 years ago in 2019, 6 years ago. The answer would have been, oh, not even $1 billion, $2 billion. Can Avengers Doomsday make $2 billion? But now, I think this question is a little more pertinent than it had originally been. And I think that there are a few reasons why. And I think it's worth bringing up now, even though it's still so early, there's still so much time before now and Avengers Doomsday, because there aren't that many movies between now and Avengers Doomsday. And outside of the, besides just things that could happen in the world, like another strike or a box office thing or, heaven forbid, a pandemic again. I mean, really, the perception around Marvel is not going to change all that much, I don't think, between now and Avengers Doomsday, because the only film that's coming out is Spider-Man Brand New Day. And we're also going to get, series like Wonder Man, Vision, and Daredevil Born Again Season 2. But again, it's just, it's a question I think is worth asking because I think that the answer is surprising. To answer the question, can Avengers Doomsday make $1 billion? The answer is yes. Of course it can make $1 billion. And track record suggests that there is a lot of precedent that would, make it more likely than other films to make $1 billion. I mean, the obvious ones being that Avengers 1 made $1.6 billion. Avengers 2 made, I think, $1.4 billion. Avengers Infinity War made $2 billion. And Avengers Endgame almost made $3 billion. So you're asking the question, can Avengers Doomsday make $1 billion? Of course it can. But then, like I said, the question we're trying to answer today is, will it make $1 billion? And here's the thing. Avengers Doomsday has a number of factors that would actually suggest to me that the chances of it making $1 billion are a lot harder than for any other film in the MCU, for any other film, any other Avengers film. First one being, and this one is something that I suspect will change, but we have to point it out now as of the recording of this segment. Dune Messiah is opening alongside Avengers Doomsday. Now, I still think, if that stays the case, and I just have serious doubts that that's going to remain the case, I think Dune Messiah is going to move, Because I do think Avengers Doomsday is still the quote-unquote bigger film, the more anticipated film. I really do. And I think that Dune Messiah, while it is going to make a lot of money, and while I think it's going to be it's going to be much more critically acclaimed than Avengers Doomsday, you have to look at just how Dune 1 and Dune 2 were handled. I mean, those two films were, received Oscar considerations, right? And no other Avengers films and hardly any other MCU film has done that. So, no, I have no doubt that Dune Messiah will be incredibly well received. In terms of money, though, I mean, the first couple Dune films have made hundreds of millions of dollars, but nothing close to $1 billion. And so I think Dune Messiah will move. But we have to acknowledge that Dune Messiah and Avengers Doomsday are opening at the same time. And that's important because those two films, you would think, are quote-unquote cannibalizing each other's box office in some kind of way. I'm not saying that just because Dune Messiah is opening with Avengers Doomsday, that Avengers Doomsday is going to lose $100 million opening weekend. I am saying, though, that there is going to be some effect. So that is one thing. Second thing, the state of the MCU. I think that we, in these circles, are generally excited for Avengers Doomsday, though a lot of us, myself included, have questions about Robert Downey Jr., about how they're going to handle it, how big this movie is going to be, all the delays and scripts and things like that. There are questions. There are certainly questions around this movie, right? But generally, I think that the consensus amongst fans is excitement to a certain extent. But you would be surprised. Maybe you wouldn't be surprised. Maybe you're hearing the same things that I am in my friend circles, where people are just not as plugged into MCU movies. And these are friends who have seen Infinity War, who followed the MCU in the Infinity Saga, who really paid attention to all these sorts of things. It's not like they're completely brand new to the MCU. But the past 5 years of the MCU have really turned some people off of Marvel. To the point where now the expectation is, aren't Marvel movies bad now? Like, is Fantastic Four even connected to the MCU? I mean, it was fine, is what one of my friends told me. It was fun, but, I mean, is it even connected? And how are things working in Avengers Doomsday? Can Doctor Doom even be a threat? The consensus around another Avengers movie, it contains more questions than it does certainties. And I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind as well. And I think just the varying quality of the films, I think people liked Fantastic Four, but, it didn't make $1 billion. People liked Thunderbolts. It really underperformed box office-wise. People thought Captain America Brave New World was okay, but it didn't make a lot of money as well. Now, you might point to a counterexample and say, but Deadpool and Wolverine came out last year and made $1.3 billion. True, that is a very good counterpoint and a very good argument in favor of the idea that Avengers Doomsday could pretty easily make $1 billion. If it's good. And I think I just want to say also, this entire premise is based on the fact that Avengers Doomsday is well received, because if it's not well received, I think the chances of it making $1 billion are much lower. I'm not going to say very low, but I'm going to say much, much lower. So there is that. But here is the real thing. So those are two reasons why I think that Avengers Doomsday will have a harder time making $1 billion. Here's the third reason, though. And this third reason I think is actually the most important and the most pertinent. And that is that the box office landscape has changed. It has simply fundamentally changed. One word, one reason why: China. If you look at the box office numbers, and I am no expert, I haven't studied every single number, every single graph, but from what I've been hearing, what I've been reading, what I've been seeing, the trends over the last few years from China have seen box office draws and box office returns from China decrease dramatically over the last few years. And while films like Fantastic Four: First Steps made a decent bit of money, and it was well received by critics, it didn't make as much money as it would have, I think, 6 years ago, because the numbers indicate that China, the numbers from China and other markets have gone down. We are simply just living in a different world when it comes to the box office. And films that would have easily cleared $1 billion otherwise, given, again, the factors that we talked about earlier, the factors of Dune Messiah, but again, I think that that's not as big of a factor. But also the state of the MCU and just the questions that people have around Avengers Doomsday, plus the fact that now international box office is not as guaranteed. I think, and also, I mean, it's not nothing to talk about the fact that we are still in a quote unquote post-pandemic era of filmmaking and films. Again, sometimes it makes a difference. Sometimes it doesn't. Spider-Man: No Way Home came out right at the end of the brunt of the pandemic, and it made $2 billion almost. So, sometimes it makes a difference. But really, I think it's simply the fact that we live in a very different box office era. And you can no longer count on international markets to boost up those global box office totals. And so the question is, well, then can Avengers Doomsday make $1 billion? Yes. Will Avengers Doomsday make $1 billion? Based on all those things, I think, yes, it will make $1 billion. But I think now, in previous years, like a film like Avengers Age of Ultron, it would have been Well, if it were released today, I think that the question of whether or not it would have made $1 billion it's a little more questionable, just in a vacuum, by the way, not coming off the momentum of the first Avengers and whatnot. Because I think that if any one of those factors that we were talking about leans more negatively for Avengers Doomsday, and let's just say Avengers Doomsday is not as good as people want it to be, and it's not well received, I think that all of a sudden the chances of it making $1 billion goes dramatically down. I really do. I think that before, like we talked about with Age of Ultron, I think that it could have coasted. It kind of did coast, because it wasn't as well received as the first Avengers, but it kind of coasted because of the varying things, right? Because of the fact that the first Avengers was so well received, it was in a robust market and all those kinds of things. It pretty much coasted to $1 billion plus. I don't think Doomsday can coast. I don't think it can. If Avengers Doomsday is really good, I think that there are plenty of chances for it to make $1 billion, and yeah, maybe even creep back towards the $2 billion mark. But if any one of those factors don't work out in its favor, I think we're looking at a very, very, very different story. And I'd be very curious to see. So right now, as of late 2025, I still think Avengers Doomsday will make $1 billion. But like I said, it's something to keep an eye out for, and we'll definitely monitor it as we go along. Guys, what do you think? Simple question, do you think Avengers Doomsday will make $1 billion? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, in this day of reboots and remakes and sequels and spin-offs, I suppose it was only inevitable that one of the modern, and by modern I mean in the 2000s, one of the most classic and beloved sitcoms of the 2000s, The Office, would get a spin-off or a sequel at some point. It's been talked about before. There are shows like Seinfeld, there are shows like Friends, or, even The West Wing that you just can't really do sequel series to with the original cast. And, it'd be a little harder to do a sequel show to Friends that they tried with Joey, for example, but it would just be a little bit harder. But The Office, I think out of all the shows, it just seemed like The Office would be the one to get another season or a revival or a spinoff. And lo and behold, we read a couple articles last week talking about how the Office, or The Paper rather, the show that we're going to talk about here today, is getting a season 2. And The Paper really was spawned out of the idea that Peacock was the streaming service that NBC, which owns The Office, was making, and they wanted some content, and so they talked to Greg Daniels, who is the co-creator of the US Office, and he found a good idea, and he decided to make The Paper. So The Paper, which already, like we talked about before last week, is going to get a season 2, has finished its run. And by its run, I mean all 10 episodes have dropped on Peacock at once. So it's still, even though it's a sitcom, it's still deciding to go with the binge model, which I think it is what it is for this first season, but I really would like for it to, it doesn't have to adhere to the weekly release model if they don't want to for sitcoms, because that's always how it's been done, and I honestly might prefer that. But if they don't want to do that, that's fine. I know that some shows have been doing things like dropping 2 or 3 or even 4 episodes at once. I feel like that would be more fun for next season, but anyways, I digress. We're here to talk about season 1 of The Paper. So this is going to be a spoiler discussion, and the reason it's going to be a spoiler discussion, even though the show is pretty new and chances are not all of you have seen the show by now, I'll give my quick non-spoiler thoughts at the very beginning of this, and then I'll delineate when the spoilers will begin. But the reason it's spoilers is because I just have a lot of things to say about the show that frankly I didn't know about this show before going into it, and I think it would be beneficial for you guys to just go into the show completely cold. Other than maybe having seen a trailer or 2. That's how I went into the show. I didn't know any of the characters' names other than maybe Ned, who is played by Domhnall. I cannot say that name. Domhnall Gleeson, the lead character, the editor-in-chief of The Paper. And that's obviously, again, I went into it very, 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 very fresh, and so I think I benefited more from that. Non-spoiler thoughts before we dive into the spoiler discussion. I think, and it's interesting, right? Because we all have revisionist history in our minds, and that's totally fine. But our favorite sitcoms, our favorite shows, The Office, Friends, Parks and Rec, or whatever, we all are like, oh, brilliant shows, and always good until the very end when they kind of tail off. I think most of these shows, their first seasons were not that well received. The Office first season, I don't think I like it particularly much. I haven't seen the entire show, The Office, in quite a while, but the first season is just weird. It's odd. Parks and Rec, I haven't seen that show in its entirety, but that show even more so, I know is maligned the first season, is because people are just like, what, this first season is just so different and not what this show ended up being, right? The show found its footing in season 2. A lot of people say you could watch Parks and Rec just starting from season 2. So I think whatever the case might be, we're getting a season 2 of The Paper. And like I said in my last week's segment, short of me absolutely hating this series, I was going to give it a chance in season 2 no matter what. Because again, season 1, these sitcoms are just finding their footing. You know, they're just trying to find their way. That being said, I was really pleasantly surprised. I really enjoyed this first season of The Paper. Yes, the Office comparisons are going to be natural. You're going to find yourself thinking about, oh, this character is kind of like Michael Scott. Oh, this is sort of maybe the Jim Pam storyline. Oh, this is, you're going to find those. It's just going to happen. But the sooner you can get those out of your head, the sooner you can just embrace what the show is, it's really good. Greg Daniels knows how to make a sitcom, where there are hilarious parts. This show is funny. I laughed out loud a few times every episode. It's funny. It's really funny. But also, there's an emotional core. That's one of the things that he's just so good at. Instead of just making a purely comedic show, just a stand-up SNL sketch, for example, these shows that he makes, The Office, and then, his writing team like Mike Schur, Parks and Rec, and all those kinds of shows, The Good Place, those shows have real depth and real heart and emotion in them. This show is no different. It's funny. It's set in in a different setting, but in the same style as The Office. And there are some really fun, I'll say, Easter eggs and connections here and there. If you've seen the trailer, you know a big one. But if you haven't seen the trailer, then yeah, it's set in the same world as The Office, and you'll kind of see how that works out. But again, I think that this show does a really good job of taking the things that work well from The Office, putting it in a new setting. And some people have said, I've seen it online, and I kind of agree with this, that this show is sort of the best hybrid version of Parks and Rec and The Office. And I agree with that. And the best part of that is there is tons of room for the show to grow. I think that this first season, while very solid for a first season, I think that this show can continue to evolve and grow into something really special. And I'm excited to see what that looks like. So I wholeheartedly recommend the Paper for those of you guys who have not seen it yet. And I think that it's going to be a very worthwhile watch for you guys who are big fans of The Office as well. So let's dive into some spoilery details now. If you guys have seen The Office or seen The Paper, or if you just don't care about spoilers, then welcome. Let's dive right into it. I think the show is really funny. I think that including Oscar, honestly, I was a little skeptical at first. I was like, is this just going to be a one-episode cameo that they're revealing in the trailer? Are there going to be other Office cameos? Nope, there aren't. And that's totally fine. I think Oscar Nunez, he plays a great role in this show as just sort of a side character that serves as a connective tissue. But if you haven't even seen The Office, you wouldn't know. I mean, it'd be totally fine. There was some subtle connections, some hints here and there that he's from The Office show. He gives little hints here and there without name dropping Michael Scott. But again, I think it's a really fun connective tissue to have in there, and he's a really good character to just kind of add to the background of the show. It took a couple episodes. Like the first 2 episodes, I will admit, it takes a little while for me to get invested in the show. But that being said, I think by episode 3, I remember this, episode 3, because I watched this over a few days. Episode 3 was where it really clicked for me. And it's where I started to get really invested in all the side characters, like Nicole, like Detrick, like there are a few, I'm not going to lie, that I think didn't get as much time as others, but that's totally fine. I mean, again, in other sitcoms, these side characters don't get as much run until later seasons when you really get to explore them, like Adam or Travis or Adalola or other characters, right? But really, the side plots that I was really invested in and had a good time with were mostly Detrick and Nicole. I think Esmeralda is sort of the most unhinged version of Michael Scott that you could have. And again, it's just the Office comparisons that are out there. And it's sort of hard to ignore that, and that's totally fine. And obviously, of course, Mayor and Ned himself. I wasn't a big fan of Ken, honestly. I think that Ken, he kind of grew on me a little bit more towards the end of the season, but he was just sort of annoying to me for most of the runtime of the show. But again, these characters are just sort of finding their footing, and I have a feeling that Ken will grow to be a character that a lot of us will really like as this show develops. And I'm really excited to see how the show develops as well. I like that this is about journalism. I like that there's a really fun bent about finding stories and news articles and things like that. I had a really good time, Every episode I watch, there's a kind of warmth in these episodes as well, where you really are reminded of the experience of watching The Office again and what that was like for the first time. It's so rare to watch a sitcom for the first time again and really enjoy it, because sitcoms just aren't made like this. And so if we get new seasons of The Paper every year, every other year, every 18 months, I would be so happy, so thrilled with that. I think Domhnall Gleeson does a great job as Ned Sampson. It's a role I have hardly seen him in. I know him from the pop culture franchises, Harry Potter and Star Wars, but this is a role he thrives in. I have one bit of concern, though, for this show. One bit of concern. And that is Ned and Mare. Not because I don't like them. I actually was really invested in their quote-unquote relationship. I know that it's sort of a will they, won't they, and it's classic sitcom, right? I was quite invested in that. I feel like, and I don't know, we're not going to know until we see how the arc of the show plays out. I feel like they rushed it a little bit, right? Jim and Pam took until the end of season 2. And mind you, right? Season 2 of The Office was 20-something episodes. Season 1 was obviously 6, so it's almost 30 episodes to get there. This first season of The Paper, 10 episodes. Ross and Rachel didn't get together until season 4, right? I don't know. Did they rush it by having them kiss and having them having the storyline sort of play out and kind of reach a conclusion? Because again, there are very interesting ways where this can go, because obviously there's now conflicts of interest, and it's obviously going to be a big problem because Ned is her boss, and how does that work and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure there are really fascinating avenues that you can explore in that way. And I totally, I'm intrigued by that. But just in terms of ramping up the relationship, was it too fast? I don't know. I really don't know. If this was a one and done season, great. I think it's fun. It's exciting. But just thinking about this as hoping to be a show that goes on for 5, 6, 7 seasons, I wonder where you could go from there. Perhaps this is a question you just shouldn't think about right now, because the first season, I really enjoyed it. And that's great. Just think about one season at a time. Or maybe this is something that will kind of play itself out as the seasons go, and it'll be totally fine. Or maybe it's something to think about, something to monitor. It's just one thing that I was thinking about towards the end of the show. Anyways, guys, I really enjoyed The Paper. It brought me back to great memories of watching The Office. It brought, again, just that warmth and depth of character and funniness and laughs and all that kind of stuff. It was great. I had a really good time. Did you watch The Paper, guys? Did you enjoy it? And if so, what was your favorite part? Who was your favorite character? Who were your favorite pairings of characters? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, who's ready for another murder mystery in the series of the Knives Out franchise? Because I certainly am. I'm of the opinion that you could just keep making these movies for the rest of eternity, and I would be totally fine with that. I would be absolutely fine with that, because now, coming in Thanksgiving time / Christmas time of 2025, we have the third installment of the Knives Out franchise, Wake Up Dead Man, directed by Rian Johnson. We're going to talk about the new trailer. And we're going to talk about some of the first reviews that came out of the Toronto International Film Festival as well. All things that I think are incredibly positive and leaning towards what I will hope is going to be the best one of the bunch, which is going to be difficult to do because I love the first one so much, the first Knives Out. And while I like Glass Onion a little bit less, I do think it's quite entertaining and still has all the characteristics and charm of the first Knives Out film. This is all created by Rian Johnson, written and directed by Rian Johnson, who, in the pop culture sphere has a pretty bad reputation just because of Star Wars The Last Jedi, a film that I maintain is flawed, but I think the parts that he does well are incredibly done well. And you can go check out my rewatch of Star Wars The Last Jedi. You can feel free to disagree, but that is just my personal opinion. Aside from Star Wars, though, the man is gifted. I mean, the way that he wrote Knives Out and directed it is phenomenal to me. It's just so well crafted. I grew up reading a lot of Arthur Conan Doyle and Sherlock Holmes, and it's incredible how he's able to take the whodunit and make it so compelling so that it's not obvious and formulaic in today's day and age. So, Wake Up Dead Man is a film that I've been very excited about. I actually read the reviews first before looking at the trailer. So I wanted to actually let's reverse it. Let's look at some of the first reviews and reactions to Wake Up Dead Man, and then we'll talk quickly about my thoughts on the trailer itself. All, spoiler alert, all very positive. So the film premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival. For those of you who don't know, it's going to be released in select theaters on November 26th, which is Thanksgiving, around Thanksgiving, I should say, and then going to be hitting Netflix on December 12th. And we talked about this with K-pop Demon Hunters, but Netflix putting some of these movies in theaters, I think that one of their biggest successes was Glass Onion a few years ago. It's going to make them extra money. It's going to be good for them. So it seems like a no-brainer to me at this point. Let's read some of these first reviews. I'm looking at a Rotten Tomatoes article that has compiled some of the first reactions to Wake Up Dead Man. We're just going to go down the list here. Rian Johnson's Wake Up Dead Man from A Knives Out Mystery is another satisfying, impossible to predict yarn. What is it? Impossible to predict yarn. I guess that was the sentence. Featuring all the series' hallmarks. Johnson has seamlessly crafted another murder mystery with even more delicious twists and turns than the previous two installments, maybe even combined. That's crazy. the fact that there are going to be even more twists and turns than the previous ones combined, because the previous two are very hard to predict as well. Johnson's third film in the series is also the one that's most full of life. It's also the most emotional. That's really good to hear. Wake Up Dead Man is twistier, darker, and more emotional. Again, there that is, than the previous two installments. So those are a lot of comments comparing it to the first film. A lot of people saying it ranks as the best in the trilogy, which is very, very exciting. And a lot of other comments saying it has a lot of really interesting concepts in there as well. And the setting of it being in a church is a very interesting setting. And let's see here. They actually do something interesting on this Rotten Tomatoes article. They categorize some of the comments based on questions. So this one says, is there more to the movie than just another fun mystery? And the people here say, Wake Up Dead Man addresses our current political climate in a fairly damning way. That's interesting. Okay. Johnson has subtly or not so subtly included timely political themes in all the Knives Out films. And that's true, by the way. There's a lot of talk about immigration. Again, this is not a political channel, but it's just pointing out the things that are political in media. There are some themes about immigration and immigrants in the first Knives Out film. And the second one is about tech billionaires. So again, very timely, and we'll see how he handles it in the third film. But this person says, but these tangents seem somewhat more personal this time around. So again, very, very positive first reactions from Tiff for Wake Up Dead Man. So then we get our first trailer, or not our first trailer, we got a little bit of a teaser, but our first really full-length trailer. And it looks awesome. I think it just looks fantastic, because what do you want from a Knives Out murder mystery? You want the whodunit aspect. Well, there's a murder. Okay. It's a priest or a pastor who dies suddenly, and he locks himself in a box apparently, and he shows up dead. The cast looks absolutely phenomenal. Kerry Washington, Jeremy Renner, so glad to see him back on the big screen. Josh O'Connor, Josh Brolin, and of course Daniel Craig himself, along with so many others, Mila Kunis, and just it's a great cast. He assembles great casts for these movies, which again, this is. Make these movies for as long as you want, Rian Johnson, because these are awesome movies. So the cast looks great. I love the part at the end where he's like, who wants to go first for the questioning? Harkening back to that scene. Really, really great scene in Knives Out where they're all the different people are being questioned individually. That's great as well. The setting and the atmosphere based on, again, a lot of people said these things in the reviews, but the atmosphere and just the darker nature of the more religious aspects. It's not, I don't think, Knives Out movies are ever going to go supernatural. But what you can do and what you can really play with is that, like Sherlock Holmes, right? For example, if you guys have read any of those books or even seen the show, like there are a lot of things in there that seem supernatural, and that's something that murder mystery authors have a lot of fun with, is that playing with the idea of could there be something supernatural about it, and then revealing that there are very real explanations for what's going on. I'm sure that this film is going to deal with those things as well. So I think it has the fun, the excitement, the whimsy as well, the great cast. Benoit Blanc is back. Daniel Craig, please just keep playing this character forever. Just keep making these films every few years, and I'll be super happy. Guys, I'm excited. I'm super excited. I am really hoping Thanksgiving is going to usually be going to be family time. So we'll see if we can go out and see Wake Up Dead Man. But if I can, I'm going to be super excited to see it. Cannot wait for it. And then we'll talk about it either in late November or early December. So guys, what do you think about this new trailer for Wake Up Dead Man? And what do you think about some of the first reviews and reactions? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, well if we know anything, and there's not a whole lot that we know, at least personally there's not a whole lot that I know, but if we know anything, we know that James Gunn loves his little teases and little hints towards his future projects. He's never been shy to talk about some of the things that will be coming up in some of his future movies and shows. He is very active on social media, not X, not Twitter, unsurprisingly, just based on his history, but on Threads and other platforms. He's very, very active in answering social media questions, answering fans' questions and theories, and debunking things and confirming things and giving little hints and things and winks and nods. So he's been doing that for quite a while now. And unsurprisingly, to me at least, he announced Man of Tomorrow last week. We talked about this announcement of the July 2027 movie Man of Tomorrow, not right as of now, not Superman Man of Tomorrow, just called Man of Tomorrow, the follow-up to 2025 Superman. And we talked about that last week, the official announcement, but now he's actually already given some plot details about it. These are things that are kind of no-does, but also, it's nice to know these things. And I think we were able to deduce a lot of these things based on the concept art that was released as well in conjunction with the movie. But I think, again, these are cool things to know and maybe little hints towards the future of the DCU. Since that official announcement, by the way, many other auxiliary things have been announced about this movie, or at least hinted at, towards this movie by certain actors, because when we recorded that segment, all we really knew was that it's just called Man of Tomorrow. It's Superman and Lex Luthor and the War Suit concept art. Since then, however, Isabel Merced has hinted that she will be returning as Hawkgirl, saying "see you soon" in a reply to a post about Man of Tomorrow. Aaron Pierre has said yes indeed to a reply about a post of Man of Tomorrow. So again, maybe a hint that Jon Stewart will be a big part of Man of Tomorrow. And now James Gunn has confirmed that Lois Lane will have a very important part of Man Tomorrow. And he's now basically come out and said what we've all kind of speculated based on the concept art of Superman and Lex Luthor side by side in the War Suit. This is what he said on the Howard Stern show earlier this week. He said, quote, "It's a story about Lex Luthor and Superman having to work together to a certain degree against a much, much bigger threat. It's more complicated than that, but that's a big part of it. It's as much a Lex movie as it is a Superman movie. I loved working with Nicholas Hoult. I relate to his character. I relate to the character of Lex sadly, which that's kind of crazy, but okay. I really wanted to create something extraordinary with the two of them. I just love the script so much." Okay, so here's the thing. And I mean, again, in principle, the title of the movie and what James Gunn is framing it as, it doesn't really matter, right? The movie is the movie, no matter what they call it. They could call this Superman movie Avengers 3 or Avengers 5 or Avengers 20 or whatever. It's a Superman movie, but they can call it giant Plastic Man or whatever. Plastic Man is a superhero, but you know what I mean? They can call it whatever they want. And the Avengers thing was facetious because obviously copyright and things like that. They can call the movie whatever they want, and it's still going to be whatever the movie is that they make. That being said, it is interesting that they're not calling it a Superman movie, because even if it is just as much a Lex Luthor movie as it is a Superman movie, you could still call it Superman, Man of Tomorrow, and, just have it be a team-up movie or whatever they're going to do with Lex Luthor and Superman. I do think it is interesting, and I think it's cool that we're going to get that dynamic. I think it's sort of a classic trope now of how do you expand on these characters now that we've sort of seen them? And I think there's only so many times that Lex Luthor can be the big bad of a Superman movie before it kind of gets old, so you kind of have to make it work in a different way. Another angle that they could go in, and this might be part of it, is having that quote-unquote bigger threat be controlling Lex Luthor, or, Lex Luthor being manipulated or something like that. There have been a lot of rumors around Brainiac, really nothing substantiated, because it's just sort of, hey, we want to see Brainiac, and so let's see Brainiac. And maybe that's the bigger threat, because there aren't a lot of bigger threats that I would see Superman and Lex Luthor having to team up against, although James Gunn made an entire movie where Starro was the main villain, so who knows about that. But yeah, I mean, I think this is, in an odd way, it sort of reminds me of Thor the Dark World, not in terms of anything quality or storyline or anything like that, just in terms of the fact that, okay, the first movie, Thor is fighting Loki, they're antagonists, and obviously Loki was the main antagonist in the Avengers, and then Loki became so popular, he became so beloved by the fans, and all of a sudden, they kind of have to team up, kind of, sort of, but there's some backstabbing going on there a little bit as well. That, and people love the dynamic between Thor and Loki. So we'll see. We'll see if this movie is anything like that. Anyways, it's interesting to get some more plot details about Man of Tomorrow. He also said that Lois Lane will have a very important role in the movie as well. And that is, again, good to see, because Rachel Brosnahan and David Cornsweet, their chemistry was really, really great. So guys, what do you think about these new details around Superman, or maybe not Superman, but just called Man of Tomorrow, the film Man of Tomorrow? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, everybody. Normally in other circumstances, for other movies, this segment, I don't think would be controversial at all. But I already know this is going to be controversial. And it's not, even without me talking about my own thoughts about this, just stating what is in these reports, stating the quote-unquote facts, which apparently are disputable now by everybody, this segment is going to have some discussion. And I welcome discussion. I don't, because again, I've seen this before. I made a segment a few weeks ago talking about why I thought Superman was successful in my eyes. That was just me. That segment, by the way, had nothing to do with the box, or not nothing, but barely anything to do with the box office. And more so to do with just my thoughts of how I think the film succeeded, despite the fact that it had Herculean expectations put on it, more on the story, like what it did story-wise. The comments were flooded with people wanting to talk about the box office, debating, did it make a profit? Was it successful or not? And that in itself is fine. It's totally fine. Some of the comments, though, got really crazy and really disrespectful, and some even really hateful, that I had to remove a bunch of them because it was just not the kind of community that I want to build here. So please, if you're going to comment about this, totally fine to disagree, totally fine to have debate. Please do not call people names, do not harass people, do not bully people, because that is crazy that we're even talking about this for a fictional movie and a fictional universe. That being said, yes, the title of this segment, the point of the segment, Superman was profitable. Superman was profitable, at least according to Variety. So all of this stems from the fact that people have been asking the question for the past few weeks, the past couple months. Has Superman been successful? Has Superman made a profit? And yes, there are well-meaning people. There are very well-meaning people out there who want to make the arguments that Superman was not profitable, the movie. And there are very well-meaning people out there who want to make the argument that, yes, Superman was profitable. And there have been debates going on. There are also, though, I want to acknowledge this, there are also people on both sides of that argument who have ulterior motives and who have agendas. For example, not just to call out one side, but just for example, there are people who want the DCU to fail, whether they are these Snyder fans or whether they just hate the DCU, hate James Gunn, whatever the case may be. There are people who want the DCU to fail and who have built that into their agenda and who have said, I am going to look for every reason for Superman to be a failure. And there are those people who are arguing that Superman is a box office failure. It's not everybody. I'm saying it right now. That's not everybody. It is a certain subsection of that population, though. So I personally, I have no stake in this. In fact, my stake in this is that I want all movies, barring that they don't have anything incredibly offensive and hateful in them, I want all movies to succeed, right? I think that movies succeeding is good. It's good for the industry. It's good for movie theaters. It's good for studios to make more original movies as well, if that's what you're wanting. More sequels as well, if that's what you're wanting. I want movies to succeed. So Superman being profitable is a good thing in my eyes. But I don't have any inherent stake in this fight. I'm not rooting for the DCU or the DCEU, one over the other. I just want I want to watch good movies. That's really what I want here. So all that being said, an article from Variety came out that wasn't even highlighting this as a key part of the article. It was a quick line in there, and literally all that line said was Superman made a profit at $125 million. Now, and that is the profit margin. Now, the article does also specify that the contacts at Warner Brothers did not confirm this. So let's be clear here, right? Superman being profitable, yes, it's not directly coming from David Zaslav's mouth, So it's not confirmed in that way. But you have to know that people who work, and this is why we quote these articles so much as almost factual, articles like Variety, reporters and reports from Variety, Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, these people's sources are super, super well vetted, and almost always these reports and sources are correct. So these are sources where I have said it over and over again, we want to take them to the bank, pretty much, because they're almost certain to be true. Or at least reported to be true. So when Variety says, even if it's a passing line, that Superman has made $125 million, yes, let's caveat that and say Variety did not come out with their entire mathematical calculations, did not come out and say which one of their sources said it. It could have been an intern, it could have been the CEO of Warner Brothers himself. They didn't say that. That's fair. That's fair. For all we know, that number is not $125 million. But I have to believe, if Variety said this, that Superman was very profitable compared to Man of Steel, which they say has made a profit about $45 and $50 million. Let's not forget as well, because people were making these arguments in the comments for my previous Superman video where I talked about whether or not it was successful. People were trying to make calculations and theater cuts and profit margins and things like that, and advertising. I mean, this profit number could also be digital, could also be toys and merchandising, could also be licensing deals, things we just literally do not have insight into. Like, we can make very good estimations and calculations about the marketing budget, which has been reported to be about $150 million, and the production budget, which was about $250 million, and the theater cuts. We can make very good estimations based on those factors alone. There are so many other things and costs and profits and revenues that come into a film being profitable or not. So, yeah, Superman, according to Variety, made $125 million in profit, and that is really good for the DCU. That shows that this film was very successful in an age where comic book movies are not making as much money as they used to. I think this is nothing but a good sign for the DCU and for DC and Superman's brand as well. It matters because it shows that while the DCU was launching with an incredible amount of baggage, it still was very successful, even if it didn't make $1 billion. It did not need to make $1 billion to be quote-unquote successful. Again, I want to acknowledge that while we say, yes, Superman was profitable, we are not, it's yes, there are some caveats to the poll, Variety reports $125 million in profit, but I, at this point, I do feel very confident in saying Superman was a box office success. I am positive that there is going to be a lot of discussion about this in the comments, so let's hear it, but also, reminder, be respectful, be kind. This is all about a movie, it's all about fun, it's all about discussion and debate. I think, though, this is a really good thing. And again, in a changing box office landscape, I think that this is going to be a very good sign for things to come. Guys, I feel scared to say this, but what do you guys think about this in the comments? Let me know. Why do you think that it's important that Superman was successful? Do you think it's important at all? Do you dispute the numbers? And let me hear your arguments. But again, be respectful. Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys. Already halfway there. Already halfway through Peacemaker Season 2, the third official project in the DCU. The second show, first live-action show, and the first project after the film Superman that kicked off the DCU slate officially, or rather unofficially, because, Creature Commandos officially launched the DCU, but Peacemaker Season 2 is now coming up and rounding out 2025. So we are here to talk about Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 4. This is going to be a full spoiler discussion. If you have not seen the episode, no worries, just save the segment for later, save the podcast, save the video for later, and come back once you have. Or if you don't care about spoilers, then welcome. Let's dive right in. So Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 4, is halfway done, I believe, because I think there are 8 episodes. And so by the halfway point, you think that, okay, we're now starting to get a real sense of the conflict, that things are heightening up, the tension is ratcheting to a point where you really start to get a feel for what's going to happen, and there can still be surprises. James Gunn has said that episodes 6, 7, and 8 are crazy, so maybe this season's going to take a little bit of a different approach, but you're kind of expecting things to start to come to a head, and you start to realize, okay, this is sort of where things are heading. That's at least my general expectation when shows are about halfway there. It's not that you're in the climactic moments of the show, but that you're starting to get to an idea of what those things might be, and you're starting to understand what the conflicts are, what the stakes are, and where we're heading. And Peacemaker Season 2 thus far, I have actually quite enjoyed. While I don't necessarily love the multiverse as a concept anymore, I think it's just been too tired, frankly. I think Peacemaker Season 2 has been doing it fine, has been doing it well, and last week's episode did show how you can do multiverse in a way, I get it, parallel dimensions, but multiverse in a way that can work in superhero and comic book movie and TV show genres. So it was good. It was fun. And heading into this episode, I was like, okay, so at the end of last week's episode, you see that Argus is heading for Peacemaker's house. They kind of did that in episode 2, but okay, they're heading for Peacemaker's house. He's leaving the dimension that he was just in. Let's see what happens. And I have to say, Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 4 was the first episode where I went, oh, that wasn't quite as good as the other episodes, in my personal opinion. Now, I'm not saying Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 4 was bad, or was not enjoyable. I actually quite enjoyed the episode. I thought some of the jokes were funny. I still think Tim Meadows' bird blindness, Flurry's bird blindness, wow, what a tongue twister. I think that joke is still funny. I think that for as silly in the moment as it kind of was, the Economos stalling tactics were pretty funny. I think that some of the things with Michael Rooker's character were interesting. We'll talk about the ending. We will talk about the ending. But overall, I'm not saying, again, this is a filler episode. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm not saying that literally nothing happened in this episode. I am saying that it was kind of odd how uneventful this episode actually was. I get it, there are emotional moments that are happening within this episode. There are things that you're learning about the characters. The beginning, I thought the prologue was quite interesting, of them, 3 of them discovering the portal to the door. And it turns out just to be sort of a way to get to the plot device, which is that little device thing that is opening these doors, opening these dimensional portals. Okay, that's fine. Really, the entire rest of the episode is basically Well, it's Peacemaker, grappling with the fact that his house, the door is being taken, so he's on the run, and then Argus is going after the door, and then Economos is stalling, and Adebayo is with him, and Vigilante's with him, and they're just all kind of hanging out in that cabin. And then, is it St. Clair or something? St. Clair, Michael Rooker's character, is going after Eagly, and then meanwhile, Harcourt is going to betray Peacemaker. And those are all things that are fine and are good moments, but it just feels like this season of Peacemaker. And it's a classic thing that happens, right? It's a thing that happens when you do sequel shows or you do sequels to movies. You tend to want to split up the characters. And sometimes that really works, right? Take Lord of the Rings, for example. I know that Lord of the Rings is based on a book, but Lord of the Rings, they split up a lot of their main characters, and that seems to really work for a lot of people, and myself included. But sometimes when you make sequel seasons of television and you make sequel movies, the tendency to split up the main characters, it just doesn't really work that well. I think of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, a recent example, where they just split Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt away from everyone else, and I just don't think it worked that well. And having all the side characters and Peacemaker just off doing their own things, because Peacemaker is off doing things in the other dimension, and he's off having his own journey of self-discovery. Meanwhile, Harcourt is kind of on and off again in the show. And we're talking about the real Harcourt here, not the other dimension Harcourt. She's kind of there, and she got a few scenes in this episode, where she's going to betray Peacemaker, and I'm sure that storyline is going to pick up, because it seems like that relationship is going to pick up. Adebayo's storyline, honestly, in this season has been really disappointing to me, because I wanted her to really grapple with the ramifications of Waller, her mom, firing, or just even the fact that Waller's her mom. I mean, that's something that we should have explored in this season. That's really not being explored. She's just kind of, she doesn't really have a job, but, that's just about it for her character. And Vigilante, I don't need Vigilante to have the deepest story arc out of all of them, but he's just kind of there. And Economos is just kind of there. And Judah Master's back. And this episode just, again, it felt like it was spinning its wheels a little bit and almost wanting to say, okay, guys, we're moving the door now. We're literally moving the doorpost, huh? Get it? Literally moving the door. And that's about it. And so we'll wait to see what happens in next episode, because James Gunn has been teasing. And I kind of hate, honestly, I feel like we've been seeing this a lot recently, where directors and actors are like, oh, wait until you see X episode of this season. It's going to blow your mind. Like the Acolyte, I remember it was episode 5. I think everyone's like, wait till episode 5. It's so insane. And then I think Agatha even, they were like, wait until the end. It's insane. The ending twist of Agatha was pretty cool. But I kind of hate how James Gunn and Steve Agee have been like, oh, wait until episode 6, 7, and 8 because they're crazy. And I'm like, this episode felt like it was just kind of stalling a little bit. Not filler, but just kind of stalling a little bit. I watched 30 or 40 minutes of it, however long it was, and I was like, I was entertained by it. I thought the Economos jokes about, when he was stalling were kind of amusing, but just really silly if you take a step back to it. And I take a step back, and I know that Peacemaker is inherently silly. I get that. But still, you're having dramatic moments, and it's almost like you want to have your cake and eat it too. Again, I want to say, I am enjoying this season, right? I am enjoying what's going on here. I just think that this episode was the first one in this season, and really the first 2 seasons in general. Maybe there was 1 or 2 episodes in season 1 where I kind of went, a little slow. I think there probably were, now that I think about it in hindsight. But in this season in particular, season 2, this was the first episode where I was like, oh, okay, interesting. I liked the conversation between Harcourt and Rick Flag. I thought that was interesting, given her history with Rick Flag Jr. But again, maybe I'm hoping for a little bit more, and maybe I'm hoping for a little bit more consistency instead of, episodes 1 through 5 just kind of be like, oh, that's pretty interesting, that's pretty neat, and then episode 6, 7, 8 be like, whoa, that's crazy, that's cool and all. I generally tend to like more consistency in storytelling thematically and all that kind of stuff. So anyways, episode 5 might be amazing, we might be back on track, but for this episode, I was just a little bit disappointed by what we got. And one last thing. I should mention the Michael Rooker bird thing, because we were going to talk about that earlier on. I think the character is, obviously he's cringy and he's terrible and he says some crazy things, right? And that's the point of the character, and I get that. The idea of him being an actual, I don't know if they're implying he's a metahuman or if he's just doing some kind of spiritual exercise or whatever to find Eagly. If that ends up being the plot device that leads to Eagly and leads to Peacemaker in the next episode, I don't even know. That was just weird and wacky, and it just felt like a little bit too much for me. James Gunn can get away with some crazy things in his movies and shows, and sometimes they work really well. That was one of the instances where I was sitting in my chair going, I so got pulled out of this show in this instant because I just don't know what's going on. Anyways, I don't know if that's... I have a feeling, I just have a bad feeling that that's going to be the whole reason that they find Peacemaker and blah, 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 and he's going to be some kind of crazy bird metahuman, and I don't know, guys. Anyways, have you guys seen Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 4? Did you enjoy it more than I did? Again, I'm not, I'm enjoying the show, but I thought this episode was a little bit weaker. Let me know in the comments what you thought down below. Alrighty, guys, well, we've known for a little bit that the sequel, the follow-up to the wildly successful Super Mario Bros. Movie has been announced for a little bit, and it's going to come out in 2026. We've known all these things for a good little while now, and we finally gotten our first little teaser for it, and a new title reveal. Because previously, a lot of sources had been calling this movie Super Mario World, but that seemed kind of vague, and I think that's based on the title of the game, but really nothing else to go off of there. We knew... This is the biggest no-brainer of all no-brainers. Super Mario Bros. Was going to get a sequel. This movie made over $1 billion. It's based on one of the most popular game franchises in the entire world. It was going to get a sequel. The only question was when and what was it going to be. So the when part was answered when they announced a release date for April 3rd, 2026, which is the current release date of the movie. And now we've gotten some more answers because the movie is going to be called Super Mario Galaxy, the Super Mario Galaxy movie, rather. And that's exciting. I think it's really exciting. And we'll talk about why, because honestly, the trailer doesn't show a whole lot, but, let's just talk about what we do see. It's a return to the Mushroom Kingdom. We see Mario just hanging out there, and then the camera, goes through the Mushroom Kingdom. Again, it goes through the landscape that we've come to know and love, and then it slowly pans upward. It slowly goes up into the sky, and it goes into the stars with a little... They're called lumas, right? The little stars in the sky, and it says the Super Mario Galaxy movie. It's coming April 3rd, 2026. And that's about it. I mean, I expect that we're going to get a more full-length trailer maybe around Thanksgiving or Christmas time, which is about 5 months before the movie comes out, so that'll be fine. I'm sure all the cast is going to be rejoining there with Chris Pratt as Mario and Anya Taylor-Joy as Princess Peach, and very curious to see who they're going to cast as Rosalina, I think, Rosalina. And that's obviously important. She's obviously an important character in that franchise. But I think this is cool because instead of just doing, Super Mario Bros. 2, I think it's a fun idea to just have these movies kind of explore the different game franchises that have existed within Mario. You kind of did this already with Mario Kart in the first Mario movie, in the first Super Mario Bros. Movie. And while I think it would be fun to do a Mario Kart movie, sort of like the entire movie is an F1 style racing movie, but just with Mario characters, I think that would be actually really fun. And they eventually can do that if they want to. And the other franchise I was thinking about within Mario that they definitely could do is Mario Party. I think that having a Mario Party movie would be so fun, honestly, just having all the characters hang around and do crazy mini games and try to achieve some goal. I think that would be really, really fun. I'm not saying that every movie needs to be based on a game, but I think that this pattern that they're establishing here pretty early on is a really cool one. But obviously, the game franchise within the Mario universe that has really had the biggest following, I feel like, aside from Mario Kart and the main series, is Super Mario Galaxy. It's sort of been almost a cult following from what I know. Again, I'm not super plugged into the Nintendo fandom, but from what I know, it's a franchise that has really gotten a lot of love, and I remember playing those two games. They were fun. They were really fun. I didn't play them a whole lot, to be honest with you, but they were really, really fun. And I really enjoyed playing them on the Wii back when they came out. So I think this is fun. Also, the lore behind these games is super interesting as well, based on some of the game theories that I've seen and Rosalina and the Lumas. I think it's really cool what they're going to be able to do here, and just changing it up a little bit. Changing it up with the setting. A lot of us thought that the second game was going to be Yoshi's Island because of the post-credit scene for the first movie, and Yoshi could still be a very big part of this as well, so we'll have to see about that. But I think that this is a really fun idea, and I can't wait to see it. I think that there is sort of this idea that nostalgia and capitalizing on big franchises and things like that is inherently a bad thing, and it can be a very bad thing. It can be a very lazy thing for studios to do. At the same time, though, you have one of the most beloved franchises in the world. As long as it's done well and it's fun and it's entertaining, I have no problem with them just making things. If you guys haven't been to Nintendo World, the theme park based on Mario, it's really fun. It's really, really fun. So I would be, I'm all for this and can't wait to see it come next April. Guys, have you seen the little teaser trailer for Super Mario Galaxy, the Super Mario Galaxy movie? And what did you think about it? Are you excited for this film to be the second part in this franchise? Let me know in the comments down below. And everybody, that will do it for episode number 95 of the Access Blockbusters Pod. Thank you so much again for joining us. We are, like I've been saying, on the road to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. We are halfway through September, so guys, thank you so much for joining us, for just continuing to foster the discussion and really just make this channel what it is. I appreciate you guys so much. Make sure to subscribe. Follow us on the audio-only platforms as well, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Overcast. And that will do it for episode number 95 of the Access Blockbusters Pod. I will see you guys in the next one.